So the good old website conversions, WC. Now website conversions is basically everything that is optimized, everything that is under the umbrella of the conversions, which can be a purchase, it can be an add to cart, a view content, initiate checkout, add payment info, lead, and all of that. Mostly in e-commerce, our end goal is the purchase. So that's what we're going to talk about mostly. But I do want to touch a bit about website conversions in the whole, because there's a lot of things that people are not aware of, like why to optimize on steps before a purchase. And I'm going to basically just set it clear why. There's a lot of reasons to that. So first of all, what is a website conversion ad? Now, the purpose of the website conversion ad is to optimize on a certain action that happens on your website using the Facebook pixel to get more of that specific action. Okay, obviously, because what it is that if you optimize for purchase, you want the ad set to get more of that action, so more purchases. The website conversion campaign, it will be your most converting campaign because it's influenced by Facebook's data and your own data. So the thing is that you'll always end up using conversions campaign to bring in the sales. I'm not saying that you're not going to use the other PPEs or video views or clicks to website, because there are a reason for those as well. But the front end sales, the one that's bringing you the most money, the ones that's generating over 90% of the revenue, will come from conversion campaigns. Okay, those are the direct response ones that will just bring in the sales. Now again, just to make it clear, for those of you that are not aware, at the end of the day, we're talking about the ad wise. Every campaign objective will have the same front end ad in a way. These conversions or PPEs or clicks to website or anything that is the conversion objective is just what happens in the back end. Now, I know most of you know that, but I just want to make that clear for those of you that are new to Facebook, that every time I'm going through a different campaign objective, I don't want you to think that I'm talking about a completely new different ad, because an ad is just what the user sees. Behind what the user sees is a full-on infrastructure. And all of that is, almost everything has the same front end ad at the end of the day. Of course, you can choose between photo or video or whatever, but the back end is what's different. So a conversion ad optimized for purchase and a PPE can be the same exact ad that the user sees. But what Facebook will do with it is different. The people that it shows it to is different. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Now, first of all, to understand before I actually touch on the other conversion objectives other than purchase, I want you to understand the e-commerce conversion funnel. 99% of the time at least. This is if you're using Shopify and your pixel is installed through Shopify. It's probably true as well if your pixel is installed through other sources, if it's Trackify or Pixel Perfect. But this is the main funnel through Shopify, okay, or through almost any e-commerce platform. When I say funnel, I basically mean the pixels that get fired. So the first event that happens when somebody arrives to your website is a view content. Okay, that's the first action. He comes, he sees the website, he sees the product page, a view content is fired. Now, view content will fire every time the person goes and sees different products. Okay, you have to understand that. So if a user comes into your website, he sees one product, he goes to a different product, he goes to another product, that's gonna mean 3 view contents because he did 3 times. Same thing with add to cart. If he goes and he adds a product to cart and he goes and he adds another one, it's gonna basically fire an add to cart, and every time he adds a product to cart. So again, to go a few steps back, a view content is when the user actually arrives at your website. When the user adds something to cart, that fires an add to cart a pixel. Now, when he checks out, an initiate checkout is fired. Now, checks out, I don't mean that he goes and he buys, he completes the purchase. He just goes and clicks the checkout button on the cart, which the next page after the cart is usually the contact information, like the shipping address, name, and so on. So when he reaches that page, that's the initiate checkout is fired. Now, when he gets to the page where he needs to put his payment info, that's the add payment info page. Now, don't mistake it that an add payment info does not fire when the user finishes to add the payment info. It only fires when he reaches the page where he needs to put the payment info. Because if the user finished to put the payment info, that means, and he actually purchased, that means that's no longer an add payment info, he actually purchased the product. So again, initiate checkout is when he goes and he reaches the checkout, and then add payment info is when he goes in he reaches the payment page, and when he completes the payment, obviously he'll go and make a purchase. So this is essentially the funnel. So let's say out of 10 view contents, or like let's say out of 100 users that go through the funnel, let's say 20 of them add to cart, 5 of them initiate checkout, 2 of them add payment info, and then 1 of them purchase. Okay. Again, these I'm just throwing out numbers out there. It's different from funnel to funnel, from product to product, but this is the main e-commerce conversion funnel. Of course, the more he reaches the end of the funnel, which is the purchase, the more warm the lead is. So somebody that just comes and views content and leaves the website isn't really as warm as somebody that goes, views content, adds to cart, initiated checkout, and then leaves. Because the person that initiated checkout has already went through a few steps and is already basically almost ready to purchase. Now, this is where we're going to start doing some math. Now, I want you to put your thinking cap on because it might get a bit complicated here, but it is important for you to know this. So it's recommended that you optimize on an action that is closest to your end goal, okay? Now this is pretty obvious for most of you because you want to optimize for whatever is closest to the end goal meaning purchase. But you want to make sure that you set the ad set budget high enough that it could potentially get you at least 3 to 5 conversions a day on that conversion that you're optimizing for. Now that's a minimum, okay? And now if you cannot afford that, then you want to optimize for a step lower than your end goal, like an add payment info or an initiate checkout or an add to cart. Okay, so this is where you might want to sometimes not optimize for purchase and optimize for conversions that are a few steps back. Let me explain. Let's say we're selling a $20 product, okay? And let's say you don't want to pay more than $10 to acquire a purchase. Because let's say your product cost is $5, you know, so if you're paying $10 to acquire a purchase, you're left only with like $5 in profit. So let's say $10 is the maximum you're willing to pay to get a purchase. So your budget, the daily budget on the ad set, needs to be a minimum of $30 a day on the ad set, because 10, which is how much we want to pay maximum, times 3 equals 30. The 3 is because that's the minimum that of the conversions that they would want to get if you look up, because I said that can potentially get you at least 3 to 5 conversions a day minimum. So I'm taking the 3 here as an example. So basically, you don't want to pay more than $10 a day. You're going to take that 10, you're going to multiply that by 3. $30 is going to be the daily budget on that ad set. Why $30? Is because $30 gives Facebook enough room to at least give you 3 conversions a day. Because if it does not give you 3 conversions a day and it gives you like 1, that means that the ad set isn't good and you're just going to shut it off, because the thing is that you don't want to pay more than $10, because $10 is the maximum you're willing to pay, and because you're only left with $5 profit at that point. And again, $30 is going to be the minimum. That's like, if you can go all the way to 50, that's even better. If you can go even more than that, that's even better. But you want to give Facebook enough room that it has room to actually optimize and actually make conversions. If you're selling a $20 product, let's say you're not in, and you're expecting, you don't want to pay more than $10 to sell, don't expect that the ad is going to work good if you put a $5 a day budget. Because $5 a day budget basically means that you're going to only get like potentially 1 conversion every 2 days. And that's not enough for Facebook to really work well or optimize. It needs to get at least a few of these conversions a day to really work efficiently. Now, if you can't afford that, let's say because a lot of products sometimes you're willing to pay more than $10 to acquire a purchase. If we're selling a $50 product and the product costs you $20, you have $30 left to spend. Let's say you can take it all the way up to $20 a purchase. So suddenly the budget is no longer 30, it's 60, because 20 times 3 is 60. And some of you I know don't want to pay $60 a day on a product to test it. So what you can do, now that's usually going to give you the best results, just so that you know, because that's just the purchase. That's the best type of conversion. Usually sometimes it doesn't work as good, which we'll get to in a second. But if you can afford it, always go with a purchase. And as well, I'm going to talk about how you can test and filter out ad sets in the first 24 hours without needing to wait like 2-3 days. So a lot of you you're thinking of like, oh, I'm going to need to pay $30 or $50 a day on the ad set, and it probably needs to run to 3-4 days, and I'll probably need to spend $150 to $200 eventually on that ad set. That's not true, because I'm going to teach you how you can filter out ad sets really, really fast. But again, if you can't even afford that, like the $30 a day or the $60 a day, again, depending on the product cost, depending on how much you're willing to spend to acquire a purchase, then this is where you want to basically consider maybe optimizing for a step backward. So let's you optimize for initiate checkout, okay, which is 2 steps before purchase. Remember, there's view content, add to cart, initiate checkout, add payment info, and then purchase. Now, average, again, this is completely average. It's very, very volatile, but average 1 out of every 4 times somebody initiates a checkout, it usually results in a purchase. So that basically means that the maximum you want to pay for an initiate checkout is $2.5 at this point. Okay, if we're talking about the same product with the same costs. Because if we concluded that we don't want to pay more than $10 on a purchase, and an initiate checkout, 1 out of 4 initiate checkouts results in a purchase, that means that if we pay $2.5 on an initiate checkout, will eventually result in $10 for a purchase, because 10 divided by 4 is 2.5. So suddenly your daily budget is not $30, it's only 7.5 minimum, because Facebook is still acquiring 3 conversions a day, but on an initiate checkout rather than a purchase. So suddenly you're on 7.5, and that's suddenly much, much more reasonable, and you're still going to let Facebook optimize efficiently. Now, of course, usually it's not going to work as good as a purchase, but it's still a good action. Like, optimizing for somebody to go and initiate checkout isn't that different than somebody eventually purchasing, because somebody that is coming and initiating the checkout is almost similar in a lot of ways to the person that's going and buying something. Now, if we take it a step backward, add to cart, that's where the traffic starts to get a bit junky, because there's a lot of people that randomly add things to cart and not really buy. There's a lot of people that randomly initiate checkout and don't buy, but it's a lot less than an add to cart. So at this point, you can go and you can run an ad for $7.5. Of course, if it's already that low, you can even go a bit higher and let's say go with at least 5 to 7 conversions a day. So instead of 2.5 instead of times 3, you can go times 5 or times 7. That will result in $12.5 a day or $15 a day. Again, the more conversions you let Facebook optimize for, the better. But have a minimum of at least 3. So if you're going on optimizing for a purchase, take the maximum that you're willing to pay on a purchase, multiply it by 3. If that's too much, you don't want to pay that much a day, go a step backward. Even an ad payment info. So an ad payment info, usually a good number is like 1 out of 2. So at this point, instead of $30, we would have chosen $15, because 1 out of 2 ad payment info usually results in a purchase. Yeah, so that will essentially result in a, like if $10 a purchase, that's the maximum we're willing to pay, then the maximum we're going to be willing to pay for an ad payment info is going to be $5. So $5 times 3 is 15. Again, I hope you guys didn't get too confused about this. I hope this was pretty clear. Again, if this is not as clear as you want it to be, or as that it wasn't as like, you're not completely understanding, a general rule will be to your product that you want to sell, how much can you afford to pay for a purchase maximum? Okay, so if it's $10 or $15, if that's the maximum you're willing to pay for a purchase, then just multiply that by 3 and put that as a daily budget. Okay, don't think of initiate checkouts or add payment info or everything I talked about. Just do that simple rule. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later on, so it might be more clearer. But yeah, with that being said, let's move on. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that not always will the end goal conversion purchase bring you the highest ROI, especially on higher priced products over $100, because the thing is that Facebook loves data, and Facebook optimizes faster on conversions that happen more frequently, like an add to cart, like an initiate checkout, and somewhat like an add payment info. So sometimes an ad will work better optimizing for an initiate checkout and getting 10 of those a day rather than a purchase and getting only 2 of those a day. Sorry. So for example, let me give you an example, right? So let's say we're selling a $100 product and we can pay up to $50 a day on a purchase. Now that essentially means to get 3 conversions a day, we have to put a minimum of like $150 a day on the ad set to even potentially get 3 a day, which even that minimum isn't really that good. Even 3 a day isn't that optimal. Like we'd rather get 5 or even 10 a day. So we've noticed that more higher priced products, we sometimes even take a few steps back and optimize for like an initiate checkout or even an add to cart sometimes, because that gives Facebook much more data to optimize with. Again, because this Facebook loves data. Like if it's getting 10 a day, 10 conversions a day, it slowly learns and learns faster on that person rather than if it's getting a purchase twice a day. Okay, so yeah, and as a general rule, by the way, again, just I always try to give like a general rule in case like you're not completely aligned with what I'm saying here or it's not completely understood. But as a general rule, purchase ads will usually work the best 90% of the time, as long as the budget is high enough to allow the ads to obtain at least 3 to 5 a day. So usually you're gonna anyway run a purchase ad 90% of the time, as long as the budget, you just put it high enough so you can actually get those purchases and let Facebook optimize. Again, this information, optimizing for initiate checkout or ad payment info, is for those that really wanna take it beyond the top. You know what I mean? And you'll notice that more when we actually get to scaling and so on. Another thing, the difference between 1 day conversion window and 7 day conversion window. I talked about that before a bit. I touched on it, but to recap on it really quick, when you optimize for a 1 day conversion window, it's basically better to optimize on that when the conversions are impulse buys. So, or impulse conversions, which is like an email, like a lead, if you're doing any like lead generation, or if it's like a cheap product up to like $20, $25 or free plus shipping products. Because those are usually conversions that happen the second the person clicks the ad, he'll usually buy it then and there. A 7 day conversion window is better to optimize on less impulse conversion. That might happen a few days after the user sees the ad, like more expensive products or longer funnels. You know, sometimes you might optimize for a purchase on a product, but the person actually only like it goes through an email sequence and only gets sold the product after like the 5th day. So optimizing for a 1 day conversion window will be really, really bad because Facebook won't really notice any conversions because it will look for conversions on that specific day. But 7 days, it will look at the 7 days as a whole. So that's what you want to do, 7 day conversion window. Again, usually for any products below $70, there'll be impulse conversion. So you can go and optimize for 1 day conversion window. But essentially, to be honest, we don't really notice a significant difference anyway with both of them. But we'll still follow these rules above because we do notice a very, very tiny bit. But don't freak out over this. Like any of these that you'll pick, it won't be a make or break moment. Okay, but I just wanted to make sure that this is clear. And another thing about optimization. Yes, there is optimization, that business manager optimization, ad account optimization, somewhat of a campaign optimization, pixel, you can call it, but 90%, like I can't tell you specifically 90%, but a big majority of the optimization happens on the ad set level and solely on the ad set level. So essentially, the more data the ad set itself gets, the better it gets. So basically, don't think that if you don't have data on your pixel or account that you cannot optimize for a purchase, because that's not true. You can optimize for a purchase even if you don't have any data or barely any data, contrary to like misconceptions. Now, I used to, like a year and a half ago, I used to actually say that you cannot optimize for a purchase if you don't have data. And that was pretty true in the past because Facebook used your data to basically continue to optimize. So if you didn't have any data, it will be very difficult for Facebook to optimize. But today, Facebook's data is very, very universal. So if you optimize for a purchase and you don't have any data, Facebook will usually just take its data that it has on people that buy and use that to optimize for your purchases, if that makes sense. So, yes, you can optimize for a purchase if you don't have any data or barely have data. And of course, if you have more data on the account, like you have more purchases, it will help the ad set optimize better because that's just how it works. If you have more purchases, Facebook will know how to optimize better because it's taking more of your data rather than the universal data. But yeah, you can optimize for purchases from the very start of your business or ad account if you have no data, but you might get better results optimizing for a lower conversion in the funnel if you don't have any data. Because that's just how it is. Because if you don't have a lot of data, then Facebook will have trouble to actually optimizing on the highest level. Again, it can work and you can do it, and we've seen results before, but you might want to optimize a step back, like an initiate checkout or an add to cart, just so you get at least like 20, 30 purchases a week, and then you can go and you can start optimizing for a purchase, okay? So that being said, that was website conversions. I hope you learned something new. Of course, later on, we're going to dive deep into ad structure and metrics and scaling, of course. So stay tuned. I'll see you in the next lesson.